The morning started like any other at the ITV studios in London. Lorraine Kelly's team was buzzing with excitement. Today's guest was none other than Sir Ian McKellen, one of Britain's most beloved actors. The 86-year-old legend was known for his charm, wit, and commanding presence. But none of the crew could have predicted how quickly the charm would turn into tension. Lorraine, ever the professional, welcomed him with her usual bright smile. "Sir Ian, it's such a pleasure to have you back. How are you keeping these days?" Ian leaned back in his chair, his silver hair catching the studio lights. "Still breathing, Lorraine. Still acting. Still causing trouble," he quipped, earning laughter from the crew. The first few minutes were warm, filled with fond memories from The Lord of the Rings and X-Men. Ian spoke lovingly of his friendship with Patrick Stewart, the two theater icons inseparable even after decades on stage and screen. But as the conversation shifted toward modern Hollywood and inclusivity in the film industry, the atmosphere began to change. Lorraine asked softly, "Do you think the industry has changed for the better, Sir Ian?" His face hardened. "Changed, perhaps, but not always for the better," he said. "We're drowning in political correctness. Actors are too afraid to take risks. They worry more about social media backlash than about art." Lorraine raised an eyebrow. "That's a strong statement. Don't you think young actors today are simply being more considerate about representation?" Ian's tone sharpened. "Considerate or censored, there's a difference. Acting is about imagination, not identity checklists." A flicker of tension passed between them. Lorraine shifted in her seat. "But surely, inclusion matters, doesn't it? You've always been an advocate for equality." "Yes, for equality, not tokenism," Ian shot back. "We fought to be treated as equals, not as boxes to be ticked." The control room went silent. Producers exchanged worried looks. The segment was supposed to be lighthearted, a nostalgic chat, not a televised debate. Lorraine tried to steer the discussion back to safer ground, but Ian wasn't done. "Do you know what's truly dangerous, Lorraine?" he said, leaning forward. "This new fear of saying the wrong thing. It's killing creativity. Everyone's walking on eggshells." Lorraine's Scottish warmth turned cool. "Well, Sir Ian, perhaps it's not fear, maybe it's progress." The air grew thick. For a moment, even the studio cameras seemed to hesitate. Ian gave a small, incredulous laugh. "Progress. When artists are silenced by outrage mobs. When truth is edited for comfort. I call that regression." Lorraine blinked, trying to regain control. "Let's not get carried away, Sir Ian. We're on breakfast television, after all." "That's precisely the problem," he said quietly. "We avoid hard truths because we think people can't handle them before they're tea and toast." The producer's voice crackled through Lorraine's earpiece. "Wrap it up. Now." She forced a smile. "Well, that's certainly a perspective, Sir Ian. Always a pleasure having you." But Ian wasn't smiling anymore. He rose from his chair, unhooked his mic, and looked straight at her. "Lorraine, it's been enlightening. But I think the world deserves more honesty, even on morning TV." With that, he walked off the set, leaving the cameras rolling and Lorraine momentarily speechless. Backstage, whispers erupted. The clip would go viral within the hour. Ian McKellen walks out of Lorraine Kelly's show after heated argument. For Lorraine, it was another chaotic morning in live television. For Ian, it was a statement, one that would ignite debates across the entertainment world about free speech, respect, and the boundaries of art. But what neither of them knew was that the confrontation was far from over. Because later that afternoon, Ian McKellen would post a message that shook social media, and reignited an old controversy he thought he had left behind. The afternoon sun was dipping behind the London skyline when the headlines began to explode across social media. Within an hour of the live broadcast, #Ian McKellen and #Lorraine Kelly were trending worldwide. Clips from the interview flooded Twitter and TikTok, short, sharp moments that made the exchange look far harsher than it had been in real time. Some users praised Ian for speaking truth to censorship, while others accused him of being out of touch with modern values. In his quiet West London home, Ian sat by the fireplace, his phone buzzing endlessly. His longtime friend and fellow actor, Patrick Stewart, called. "Ian, what have you done now?" Patrick said with a weary chuckle. "Apparently, I've offended half of England before supper," Ian replied dryly, sipping his tea. "Do you know what's funny, Pat? I said nothing I don't believe." Patrick sighed. "You never do." But you know how it goes, context disappears once it hits the internet. Ian glanced at the television. Every channel seemed to replay his words in a loop, dissecting every pause, every eyebrow lift. Commentators debated whether he had crossed a line, and one show even questioned if his legacy would now be tainted by controversy. He set his cup down, picked up his phone, and opened X, formerly Twitter. For a moment, his fingers hovered above the keyboard. Then he began to type. Greater than, I've spent 60 years believing that art should challenge comfort and provoke thought. If that's become offensive, then maybe offense is overdue. Sir Ian McKellen. The tweet was sent. Within minutes, it was everywhere. Fans and journalists flooded his mentions. Some applauded him for defending artistic freedom, others said he was fueling division. Lorraine's show issued a polite statement about creative differences, but the silence between the two public figures spoke louder than any apology. By evening, a reporter camped outside Ian's townhouse. Cameras flashed as he stepped out to walk his dog, Gus. Sir Ian, do you regret what you said to Lorraine Kelly this morning? A journalist shouted. Ian paused, tightening his scarf against the cold. Regret? No. But I do regret that conversation became about argument instead of understanding. He smiled faintly. Lorraine and I simply see the world differently. That's not hostility, that's humanity. He turned away before they could ask more, but the quote spread like wildfire. Meanwhile, Lorraine herself sat in her dressing room, watching the replay. The exchange replayed in her mind, the sharp words, the flash of disappointment in Ian's eyes before he walked off. She wasn't angry anymore, just thoughtful. He's right about one thing, she admitted softly to her producer. We do live in a time when people are scared to speak honestly. But he's wrong if he thinks kindness kills art. Her team looked at her nervously. Lorraine turned to the camera, still being prepped for the next morning's show. We'll address it tomorrow, she said. But with grace. The next day, Lorraine opened her broadcast with calm dignity. Yesterday, we had a passionate conversation with Sir Ian McKellen. I want to say that while we may disagree, I have nothing but respect for him and his contribution to the arts. Debate is healthy, even when it gets a little heated. Viewers praised her for her professionalism, and slowly the online outrage began to fade. But the story had already started a much larger discussion, one that reached beyond the small screen. Theaters across London began hosting open panels about freedom in performance. Actors and writers spoke about the balance between expression and responsibility. Ian's comments became the spark for something far greater than a morning TV spat. A week later, Ian received a handwritten letter at his home. It was from Lorraine. Greater than, Dear Ian. I hope you're well. I believe we both wanted the same thing, a world where art and empathy coexist. Perhaps next time we talk, let's do it over tea instead of cameras. Fondly, Lorraine. Ian read the note twice, then smiled. He placed it beside an old framed photo, himself and Lorraine from years earlier, laughing during a lighter interview. He picked up his pen and began to write back. Greater than, Dear Lorraine. Tea sounds perfect, but I warn you, I still plan to cause a little trouble. He chuckled as he sealed the envelope. The storm had passed, but the message remained. True artists don't avoid conflict, they use it to remind the world that disagreement is not the enemy of truth. And somewhere in that truth, two old professionals had rediscovered mutual respect, not despite their argument, but because of it.